Welcome to Capacity Europe East. We're here in Sofia, and I have with me here Sitzer Lettinger of Asa Telecom. I have Peter Ziegelwanger from A1 Telecom Austria and Ivo Ivanov of de-cix. Welcome all of you.
Thank you.
Now, let's look at the peaks and troughs in the wholesale data market in this region of Eastern Europe. Tell me, what are you seeing from your facts, your data? How is the market growing, and what sort of issues do you have to cope with? Sitzer first.
Now, for the last number of years that I've been working in this region, an explosion of data was pretty normal. Now you see it globally also, it's between 80 and 100% a year,
Wow.
the growth, and there's no end to that. So to make everything possible, and also to make sure that the users are very happy with that they can use their mobile, but also the iPads and the laptops with unlimited packages, etc. Then you have to be able to be very flexible in combining, say, Wi-Fi, 4G, 5G, 6G, but also your home connections in such a smart way that you can manage the traffic. And that's only, let's say, on the last part, or the last mile. But then you come also to the backbones, and you have to make sure that the backbones can carry so much traffic, and then also internationally. And then you get to, let's say, the peering points where everything has to be exchanged and also updated. And there's a massive amount of work to be done. Certainly because customers, they want to have high definition live TV, and we have to make that work.
Peter, A1 Telecom Austria has operations all over Central and Eastern Europe. You at the sharp end, I guess. I mean, how are you finding it?
Yeah, so we see it both from the wholesale market as well as on our retail operations. We have our retail operations along the Balkans in almost every country. Deployment of 4G took place a couple of years ago, is now really booming. So the data packages are growing more and more. You give your customer much more data, and they are, of course, utilizing that, and the networks get much better. What we also see, due to, at least for the European countries, for the European Union countries, we see due to the roaming deregulation, which took place last year, there was a tremendous increase in data, so about 400% to 600%, which happened during this roaming deregulation. So especially for Croatia, Slovenia, Bulgaria, we saw that massive increase in data during the summer periods, especially due to the visiting tourists and roamers.
We no longer turn our mobile roaming off when we land in a different country. It's wonderful, isn't it?
For the consumer,
EU,
definitely wonderful.
In the EU, yes. Okay.
For the operators, not always, because it's sometimes a lot of costs.
As a consumer,
but for the consumer, definitely. And I think we will have some other ways in the future to go on making the data communication easier. Nevertheless, on the infrastructure side, you see quite a lot of investments are necessary. So deployment of fiber, deployment of backbone, deployment of DWDM capacities is growing and growing. So the same as what Sitzer said before, we see it everywhere. On the media and broadcast side, we see 4K coming up soon. So you need to cope for all these new capacities.
But maybe to add something to that, because I think it's very interesting what you said about the roaming situation of Europe. If that would happen worldwide, then you have such a huge stimulus of traffic all around the world. And this is, I think, an excellent example how it should be.
Yes.
And something for the Brexit.
Let's not talk about Brexit, please. Ivo, I mean, you've got the data centers. How are you finding the traffic growth?
We got the interconnection services around the data centers, to be precise on that point. And de-cix got almost 20 years of company history, at least in Frankfurt, operating in Frankfurt, the largest exchange peering and interconnection service platform in Europe, and a lot of experience with South and Southeastern Europe. So first network operators from Southeastern Europe, they joined de-cix almost 12, 13 years back in time, which means that we made our experience how traffic can grow, and it's fact. The traffic will grow dramatically in the future and grew over the past couple of years or the past decade. If it comes to numbers, we did a couple of analyses on the market of South and Southeastern Europe. And if you focus on Southeastern Europe, you do see, based on different databases, around 6,600 ASNs registered. We all know that all those 6,600 ASNs are not related to network ISPs and carriers only, of course. There are a lot of corporates around this, but we'll talk about the corporates later on for sure. Now let's focus on those networks today who do actively do interconnection, which is related to their wholesale business, which is related to their backbone services. And these are all around 350. That means 5% of the registered ASNs. So you see how big the potential of growth there is. Out of these 350, de-cix has 25% already connected to the platforms. Around 90 customers, 90 networks, with a connected capacity of 2.1 terabit. So today. So you see there's a big room for increase on traffic. We see 30% traffic increase per year out of the region, which is a good indication for growth in general. And future trends, as Peter and Cesar mentioned, like 4G in the future, 5G, we do see needs for high quality services like high definition, 4K video streaming. The gaming industry is extremely demanding. The cloud industry is demanding if it comes to latency and being present on site. So all those are topics which will lead to the result that the traffic increase, but also the quality of traffic requirements will be dramatically important in the future.
Okay. What about the peaks and troughs? We're here in Sofia during the World Cup. Last night there was Croatia and Russia both playing. I mean, what are you seeing? Are you seeing during the World Cup a huge rise in peak traffic? And how are you coping with it?
And not that huge as, if I might answer to this, because it's obviously related first to the interconnection platform itself and of course to the backbone of the network operators. And we do not see that high peak comparing probably to the latest software update on some mobile, on some software and mobile phone manufacturers and operators. As you might imagine, companies like Apple, Samsung, Google and others, if they do a software upgrade, we see a huge traffic peak there. If it comes to events like the Olympic Games or the World Cup as we have these days, of course there is a traffic increase due to different events. However, I believe this is done more on a bilateral level, so the overall big peak is not there. The traffic is huge enough and the capacity is huge enough, so we cover those streaming peaks with the existing capacity.
Okay, so it's Google, Apple, Microsoft, and whatever
the drivers
doing their updates. Yeah.
But I think in general people are still watching football with friends on a big screen. Okay. So say streaming on let's say a small screen is maybe something for the future, that we get, let's say, more isolated from each other, but now let's say it's more a coming thing.
It's a communal.
Thanks God, so that's good
to
have it. It's a social experience as well, right?
But if you look at the big events like Formula One, the World Cup, and now we're already in negotiations about the European Cup in 2020, that we're going to do the RFPs, etc. And the capacity that they are demanding is growing so rapidly. We're going, let's say, from a few 10Gs already to 100G in the new RFPs. That it's fantastic. I love it.
Yeah, even if there would not be any price erosion, on the capacity, on the international capacity, but we see the same. We see it on the backbone side, on the wholesale side, because we are serving some of the events with our own capacity. So we see year on year on the Formula One, you say it was in Austria on the weekend. So we provided the connectivity there, and we see year on year the capacity increase, which is necessary to provide a lot of camera positions and all in highest resolution. On On the event side, we have both, as we are serving our retail also with IPTV and with streaming, we definitely see some peaks happening during some type of football games. So definitely we have it. But normally you cope in average for all this capacity demand, and it's more steerable, this type of traffic. But capacity will grow. I think they are the main drivers. It's really from the content side. Currently, it's mainly the OTTs providing the main content. It's the Googles, the Netflix, which when we look in our statistics of the network, are consuming most of the bandwidth.
If you look back at the last 5 years in Europe, Netflix was 5 years ago not visible, and now I think they're number one, at least in the Netherlands, etc. And but if you look also at peak traffic in Azerbaijan, the peak traffic is at 11 p.m., so almost at midnight.
Wow!
And it will.
Everyone watching movies late at night, isn't it?
I don't know exactly what they're doing, but let's say the peak is not during the day. It's really after 8 o'clock.
So it's driven by the consumer market
yes,
rather than business.
Very much, yeah.
Okay. So let's come on to investment in data centers in the region. What are you seeing, Ivo? Because you're this, and you can see that most visibly. What are you seeing in terms of new data centers, expansion of data centers?
de-cix is data center neutral, so we do operate the platforms in several data centers. Depends on the density of networks in these data centers and their relevance for the market. Of course, de-cix as an organization doesn't have direct investments in data centers. However, we do see the trends there, and you're right, we analyze these trends because they're important for the whole market and for our business directly, providing services to the networks connected to the platform. From our point of view, investments in the region locally will grow over time. Why? Because there are two trends. The first one is the trend in terms of capacity of data center space and services needed, disregarding the type of business model. And the second one is the trend to deliver closer to the users. As much as possible. We already mentioned the OTTs delivering content. We do have different cloud service providers creating services for the business customers mostly. We do see other trends for the gaming industry specifically. All these trends, they require a local presence as close as possible to the edge. And this requires a data center capacity on site in the region, closer to the business and business users and the consumers. This is the reason for investments we saw done last year. Big investments in the region. We have the example of Equinix acquired Zenium in Turkey, in Istanbul. We see other investments in Sofia, building up new data centers from scratch. All these investments are done from the background of getting the content closer to the edge. And the second trend, major trend, are enterprises and corporates. They start using hybrid cloud solutions, even in some areas public cloud solutions, and need professionally maintained data center services without doing data center on their own, as this was the case in the past. So now they do look into business models where a professional data center operator will deliver them services they had previously in their own organization. Now there's a kind of outsourcing closer to hybrid and private, but also to some degree public cloud solutions and setups.
Thank you.
Maybe I'd like to add something to that. From the financial sector, there's also a huge interest in the data center market. And mainly because the interest rate was very low. And with a data center, I think the minimum return on investment is like 5%. It's a bit boring business, but also the customers, once they are in, they never leave. If it's full, you extend. And so
it's a good solid investment.
It's a very solid investment. So if you have, let's say, some big funds that want to have a good mix between, let's say, daring investments and solid investments, then a data center fund is working pretty well. And I saw in the last few years several data center funds being erected, and they're growing. First, they start in their own country, then they go to the neighboring countries, and when there's enough confidence, then they will go also further, let's say, down Eastern Europe, etc.
Are you seeing much in Azerbaijan?
It's a different market.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
But you also see there, and funny enough, in Georgia, there's a huge growth in data center demand, and mainly because of the crypto mining. And I also hear that over here, that also the data centers here, they have, let's say, people lining up for doing the data mining of crypto.
For cryptocurrency.
Yeah, and it's madhouse.
Very popular here.
Yeah,
very
it's a
popular. That's what we discovered as well, talking to partners and connected networks. However, it's a different type of data center business, right? If it comes to crypto mining, very power consuming and
the lowest the power price is, the better the location.
Well,
Yeah,
that's correct. Yes,
Right.
it's
okay.
driven by the price for the electricity.
So what about across the A1 Telecom Austria
in our,
territory?
let's say, from our perspective, I totally agree on what everyone said. We are very, very much focused on business and enterprise. And we have migrated, and this is an ongoing process, from a classical telecom company to an ICT company, because we see all the demand in cloud, in giving solutions, in outsourcing. Customers don't want to run their own servers anymore. They want to source it out into the cloud. So we have a heavy investment in data centers. So we mainly focus our data center build out on our business and enterprise customers. So we're building out in almost all markets data centers. We just completing a new data center here in Sofia. We have opened a data center a couple of months ago in Belarus. We are building a new data center in Austria, which is opening in autumn. So in all our markets, we are doing data center, mainly focused on enterprise, on our enterprise business. Because we see the outsourcing requirements, and we see the movement into the cloud. So this is really very important for us.
Excellent. I mean, let's look at content delivery capabilities. I mean, are you seeing a lot more investment by other operators, other carriers in the area because of this data consumption going up? Are you seeing your rivals, but also your business partners, expanding their networks considerably? I mean, can you give me some examples of who you're seeing, Sitsa?
Now the Azerbaijan market is more or less split in, let's say, two flavors. And we suffered a little bit from the oil crisis.
Right. So the oil price went down. So
now the oil price is up, but it takes, let's say, a few years before the whole economy is stimulated again. And but what you see is the whole model of retail has also changed. Now it's unlimited data, and that has quite an impact on let's say, the consumer's level. But still, the growth is workable. But at this moment, Azerbaijan is not really a big transit country. And the idea is to aim for, let's say, the Iranian, but also the Kazakh to China, and then have the Euro-Asian connection there. Right. And when that is possible, then, you can have, let's say, the big transport coming up. And then the effects of that locally will also be visible. But now you are more like a cul-de-sac
the local effects will be what? More availability for your
there's
customers.
more interaction than with other countries, and then it might also be possible to have a hub in Baku, because it's the nearest capital to Tehran. And if it's halfway China also, that's a good place for putting data centers and having, let's say, sort of refreshment station. Like it used to be with Marco Polo and the camels, that they went into the caravanserai to get, let's say, refreshment and to rest a little bit.
So it's a caravanserai for data.
It's a very good metaphor, because it still works in that way,
Okay. And you're sort of halfway between Asia, Southeast Asia and Western Europe, I guess.
In 96, in 2006 was a big earthquake in front of Taiwan, and all the sea cables got cut. And then Asia, I think, was 3 weeks, 4 weeks without internet. And then I read a few months later that they will put more sea cables in. And I thought, do I read this correctly? Then I looked at Google Earth and I saw if you put a bird's flight, then you have to go, let's say, over the old Silk Road.
Yeah.
And
And certainly China is investing hugely in that concept of the Silk Road.
They are, but they're doing it, say, with transport, like railway and gas transport, etc. But there are a lot of issues also because if you have the railway between China and Kazakhstan, I think, then you have different tracks.
Yeah,
so,
different gauge, yes.
So you have to move everything, so it has to be aligned. And those projects take a long time, but I think that the Chinese are doing a very interesting project there. And it will have a lot of effect for the whole region, but also for the business between Asia and Europe.
Right, yeah. Okay, what are you seeing, Peter?
I think there is a trend, especially for the content delivery, to become to get shorter latencies. So the demand is there on shorter routes, more backup and redundancy.
Is that for particular markets who are wanting shorter latency? Because if we're just watching football or movies, then it doesn't
IoT,
really matter.
For instance,
Yeah.
IoT.
Okay.
If you have IoT applications coming up, you need short latency. 5G is demanding for latency. It's
Of
actually
1 millisecond
requiring
or something,
very, very low latency on the radio. So you have to build up also your networks accordingly, and also in the backbone networks. So what we see certain requirements from some of the major content providers looking for more express routes, which means the shorter the distance between 2 points, the better. We also see in the past, SOFIA was like a hub into other countries. We see a tendency that and it's also a political issue, that the traffic will go more and more into Turkey and Iran. Still a little bit blocked by some political decisions, but I think at a certain point it will open up, and you see a huge demand going into Middle East and into Iran, especially because of a lot of people living there. So
so it's preparing for this.
Yeah, currently SOFIA is like a hub for these regions, but I think in a couple of years they are moving onwards. Yeah,
right.
And what de-cix said, there's different ways also going to China. So I think the shorter the way, the better, and you see the content going more to the edge, and the requirement is to come more to the edge. You see a main driver behind that in the infrastructure, from the infrastructure side and from the OTTs.
Okay, Ivo, you're
I couldn't
there.
agree more.
Yeah.
This is exactly what we believe in as well. Having said this, this is the reason why de-cix started an exchange 7 years back in Dubai for the Middle East, and of course 3 years back in Istanbul. We see a huge potential there. We believe that due to population, due to economic growth in these countries, like Turkey, like Iran, of course, but also the neighboring country of these countries, there will be a shift of traffic gravity, gravity for interconnection. Indeed, SOFIA today plays an important role. This will stay in the future, but we'll see new hubs like Istanbul, closer to the edge where the economic growth happens, and where the millions and billions of people consume internet-based services. This is the general trend at all. We see a shift of traffic and interconnection demand from north to south, as we saw this couple of years back from west to east. So we have these two trends, eastwards and southwards. Eastwards towards of course, Southeast Europe, Middle East, Asia, between both continents, Europe and Asia, maintaining the traffic needs and the demand for interconnection as local as possible. And southwards, because London, Amsterdam, and even Frankfurt to a certain degree, they cannot serve the interconnection needs for Africa.
They're too far west, and yeah.
Of course, due to new applications, and we had this in our discussion already, based on 5G technology in the future, we'll see. But even currently, a lot of applications who are the market, if it comes to high-def video streaming, cloud service providers, they also require the lowest latency possible. They require a local presence, local interconnection, and local infrastructure. So the times change. Therefore, look at de-cix Madrid. We opened the exchange 1.5 years back. So in 1990 and 2016, so almost 2 years now back in time, and it's the fastest growing exchange on the planet. More than 120 networks connected already there on site in Madrid, which is a justification what I'm saying. I'm not talking about Spanish operators or operators from the Iberian Peninsula. I'm talking also about the big international guys, all the well-known OTTs, cloud service providers, they're already on site and connected to. And even services we introduced between Frankfurt and Istanbul, introducing Istanbul to the big interconnection community in Frankfurt, they show us that there is a huge demand. We have several requests for networks out of Frankfurt to get at least a virtual remote connection to the peering community in Istanbul, and later on they will be directly on site. I agree with Peter, this is definitely the trend for the future based on the localization.
And maybe to add a little bit to that, Istanbul geographically is supposed to be, let's say, the hub for the whole region.
Yeah.
But Sofia is.
Right.
That's also why we are in Sofia, I think, today.
Excellent, yes.
And I think it's the lack of connectivity, and maybe also a little bit the situation of Istanbul with politics, etc. That people are a bit hesitating of going there.
It's looking at the long-term stability, or concerns about the long-term stability, I suppose.
Yeah. But Sofia, let's say, very wisely maneuvered itself also because of high-skilled staff and cheap labor, and that the conditions are perfect here. But it doesn't mean that Istanbul will not in the future also do what it's supposed to do, to be the geographical, let's say, biggest hub. And I think we will see that happen anyhow, despite on what's happening politically. Because it's very important for the economics. Because what we are doing here in this business is to transport all communication that is creating the economics. And if that's not done in the fastest way, in the best possible way, then the economy will also suffer from that. And that's a very important thing that also some governments need to understand, mainly also more eastwards, that if you don't have a real free market and you apply the same laws as in Europe, etc., then let's say the economy will also not develop in the best possible way. And
so Sofia is really becoming a hub for this part of Europe, is it?
Sofia is the hub.
It's already. Yeah.
And that's exactly also why we are here. But if you look at the old trading developments of the last 500 years, then Amsterdam used to be, let's say, the biggest one, and also London, etc., because of, let's say, the ships. But if you will start, let's say, a new harbor and that a lot of people are coming together there, then things will develop, and then you will be flourishing from that. But you have to create, let's say, the platform for that, and there should not be too much involvement of local governments or taxes, etc., to capture that. So if you put it as a free playing field, then the chances of huge development are there.
So is that what's attracting content companies to Sofia? That is the fact that it's part of the EU, is that important as well? That it's subject to data protection laws and things like that?
Definitely, these are the major reasons. This is the stable political and business environment, of course, a secure business environment, as the colleagues mentioned already, very good skills on the human resource side. You do have extremely experienced engineers, network engineers, software developers. You see a very open framework from the regulatory perspective, a very competitive market with proper services at a reasonable price. These are definitely the reasons for having this high dynamic here on the market and growth. In the future, and want to support what Sitja said about the circumstances which are crucial for creating hubs. And let's think about the history of telecoms, and we'll see common examples of having hubs in cities and metros who were playing a major role in the past with old industries. So the telecom business follows these rules. If you look at the hubs today, telecoms hubs today, established in Frankfurt, London, Amsterdam, New York, you name it, Hong Kong, Tokyo, Singapore, just to mention a couple of these cities, even Dubai for the Middle East, these cities all, they have been playing a role as a harbor, logistic hub, finance center, center for trade, and these are the questions we have to answer if it comes to Southeast Europe. Where are those metros placed in? And talking about Istanbul, definitely being a city with thousands of years of history, playing a role of big hub in the future, logistics center and finance hub today, with these ambitious projects, with a third probably largest airport on the planet, which is in construction today, with very ambitious infrastructure projects, as a logistic hub already today, finance hub for the region. So there is a good reason to believe in that Istanbul might play a hub role in the telecoms industry as well.
Okay, good. Peter, what do you?
Yeah, totally agree. So as I said before, maybe currently political situation is not giving everyone the freedom to move to Istanbul. There is still a lot of local hurdles from regulatory perspective on setting up subsidiary. We are running a POP in Istanbul. We have a company in Istanbul, but I know the impact on the tech side, on the regulatory side, on the reporting side, on the securing and supervision side. So there is a lot of effort, which we don't have in Sofia, by the way. So Sofia is much easier to handle from a legal perspective.
So Sofia, Istanbul. Are there other cities in Eastern Europe, Central and Eastern Europe, that you identify as becoming major hubs for content?
I think after every 1,000 kilometers, you need to have a new hub.
Yeah.
Right.
And
So Baku, you're saying, or?
Exactly, yeah. And if it's not supposed to be in Tehran, then it will be the nearest to Tehran. Then
Okay.
Baku is very nice. But something positive about Istanbul, a friend of mine is doing a project for the EU to align, let's say, the EU telecom law with the Turkish telecom law. And I think that's a very important project. And I hope that they will be very successful there.
Okay. And that's what, working for the Turkish government or the Turkish telecom industry?
I don't know exactly, but it's an EU project together with the Turkish government, so to align the things, and I think that's a very positive thing to mention.
But this is important because if it's not aligned, the big internationally operating network operators, they will pick up these countries with a regime which is as close as possible to the open environment they prefer to work in, and the same look and feel which they get in London, Amsterdam, Frankfurt, they prefer to see in the new markets. And as closer these new markets are to the well-known regulatory environment they love, the better the chance to see these markets growing in the future.
They don't want any surprises that for the lawyers say, oh, you can't do that here.
Who loves bad surprises on the regulatory or legal side? Nobody, actually. If it comes to business, the preferred solution is to have it easy. From the reporting side, you can be instantly compliant with the framework. So these are the preferred solutions. And talking about demand for interconnection in the future, from a geographic perspective, I want to add something to what Ciccia said. Every 1,000 kilometers, agree. This is very valid for the big aggregation hubs, and we'll see this in the future, definitely. But let's think together about different type of requirements we'll see next to these big aggregation hubs, which are the requirements of IoT interconnection. And if we talk about IoT interconnection, we'll see a demand for having small, very flexible interconnection nodes, let's say every 50 kilometers, probably every 100 kilometers, placed on crossroads, on highways, placed next to big industrial areas, because the Internet of Things, if we talk about automotive or other sensors, they need desire services which are probably at zero latency. Because if it comes to crucial infrastructure, and the automotive is a good example for this, if it comes to information about accidents, analysis and alerts, you need zero latency there, and
You
the
can't beat
highest
the speed of
interconnection
light, so
security.
you know
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
So these are two trends, creating next and further big hubs for aggregation of traffic services, and in parallel to this, investing in infrastructure supporting the needs of IoT interconnection, which are pretty much close to the individual as a consumer or business in the office.
So that takes us, I think, to our last question. I mean, what needs to be achieved to meet network requirements in the future over the next few years? So you're saying, Ivo, lots more small hubs every 50, 100 kilometers across Europe. So are you seeing that as well, Peter?
I think definitely for the IoT industry, there's totally different demands.
Because A1 Telecom Austria has been quite advanced in IoT, haven't you?
Yes, so we actually have founded a separate company a couple of 2 years ago to focus really on all the digitalization, all the digital business. It's called A1 Digital, and they are working heavily in the cloud space as well as in the IoT space to really enable smart homes. That is one perspective. In the automotive industry, we already provide services in the automotive industry, but it's mainly now based on existing networks, on existing mobile networks, like for connected car. But the demand for a car which is driving alone, without any driver, you have to be in the lowest milliseconds to avoid any accident. Yeah, so.
But also the backup, because if one goes down, then
redundancy is required because you have to save lives also. Yeah.
Well, yes.
So that is really critical, and I think these demands are coming. So we see the demand from the content industry that everyone wants to have a better picture on his TV. So it requires 4 times more capacities. We see it on other technologies like the IoT technology, which will require totally different infrastructure. I'm not sure now how the networks will look in 5 to 10 years. I'm not sure about that now. But still, I think we as telecom companies, we have good chance to be a major driver in this type of business, and we should be the major driver in this type of business.
Sounds like there's a huge investment needed over the next few years. If we've
Definitely.
got now a sort of grid of 1,000 kilometers or whatever, and we're going to go down to 50 to 100, you're talking about a 100-fold increase in density.
And when we look on 5G, you know, the investment is on the frequencies because the regulator or the government wants to see money for the frequencies. You see the network deployment necessary on different technologies. You have to swap your networks. You have to connect every mobile site with fiber.
Yep.
There is no more,
So you're doing millimeter
no more
waves
chance to
and-
do microwave.
Yeah.
You have to connect every mobile site. So I think we cannot do it alone. We have to do consortia. We have to build our networks together. I think infrastructure should be built together. It has to be funded by the governments to a certain extent, because you cannot only build in the cities, you also have to build in the rural. And there is no viable business case probably for any other type of business. So we need some public money also, because we spend money on taxes. We need some public money also be spent on the new demands and on the new technologies.
So are you seeing sort of shared fiber networks shared
Yes,
across a lot
definitely.
of mobile operators?
We already do it now, so we are sharing infrastructure. We make co-builds on infrastructure routes. So we do that in the cities because the city government doesn't allow you to dig twice on the same way. So
And they're
please
right,
put
yeah.
everything in one dig. Yeah.
Yes, but I like to add something on that, because the fiber business itself is quite often seen as, let's say, the last thing needed, but it's going to be the first thing. You need to have fiber everywhere, and also the OTTs now want to have their own fibers. And you see it also in other cities around Europe and Italy. And
in the local network, or
yeah.
Oh, really?
Let's say if they have, let's say, their CDNs in data centers, eventually they want to have their own fibers there.
So they start creating their own network as well. We see a couple of examples with classic content network and content delivery networks from the past. They invested into new business models operating network today. And if I might add something to what the colleagues already mentioned about the high requirements for fiber everywhere. There's high requirement for high resilient data centers as well. And I will summarize this into digital infrastructure. Digital infrastructure, disregarding the layer, of course, we all agree that it starts with the fiber, but there are more aspects to that as well, is extremely important for the economic growth in the future, in all countries involved then, because everything is digital today, and we all agree that this will be the case tomorrow as well. And digital infrastructure is the foundation for economic growth. And I think this is the best advice decision makers on the political and low level they should get and follow. Support digital infrastructure, because digital infrastructure is the #1 foundation for economic growth in the future.
So are you seeing governments are recognizing that, or are they?
To a certain degree, but
Yeah.
probably not enough.
Yeah. And what about the financial community, the investors?
We see increase of interest there, increase of attraction, and a lot of appetite, and this will be the case in the future, even to more extended way, because the finance and investment stakeholders, they already identified that investing in digital infrastructure business, disregarding some probably boring return on investment stats, they might be in there, are very solid on the long term and crucial for further business models. So therefore, they will stay attractive.
It really is the foundation of the modern economy, isn't it? Yes.
Maybe to add something to that,
Yeah.
I have a few friends that started a data center fund some years ago, and they do it very well. But now, because let's say the return on investment is limited, they will start also with the fiber business to connect, let's say, all the data centers on fibers and to do more activities there, and that will increase their EBITDA percentage. So then you come, let's say, back to that, where is, let's say, more potential. And I think the financial industry is getting ready for joining those investments. And I think the Norwegian investment fund, the state investment fund, which is the biggest in the whole world,
Because of all the oil from the North Sea.
I think they have 800 billion there. They not only, let's say, split it in 3 funds, but they also opened it up for infrastructure investments. It used to be forbidden, and now they have made it possible that they will also do a lot there. And also other financiers will follow them soon. I think it's a very interesting development going on. But we need that finance also. If it has to come from governments itself, it will not be sufficient enough.
And partnerships, consortia, you mentioned this, Peter, are extremely important. Just to give you one example, and this happens to a certain degree, but it's not enough. So we can, from out of the industry, we can even think about making these initiatives bigger. Like the example of digital infrastructure initiative, Alliance for Digital Infrastructure, de-cix supports as well in Germany. Specifically, we do have a couple of data centers being part of this alliance, and some fiber operators with one clear statement towards the government. Start recognizing digital infrastructure as the foundation. Please believe in the support of digital infrastructure on every single layer. So I believe a pan-European initiative and alliance is required as well, because we all know the telecoms business doesn't stop at the border.
Exactly.
That's not what we see. So therefore, international alliances for better infrastructure are required and will come. I'm pretty sure about this.
Great. Well, thank you very much, all of you. Ivo, Peter, Zitza, It's been a fascinating discussion, lots of food for thought for where we've got to go in the future and the sort of support we need from finance and from governments. So thank you all very much, and we'll go back to the rest of Capacity Europe East. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.